Do you ever feel stuck, like you're living your life on autopilot? Are you ready to shift into high gear and reach the success you so richly deserve? Welcome to the Play Big Movement podcast. I am your host, Sharon Lechter, entrepreneur, business strategist, and best-selling author. Playing big is not about settling for good enough or being comfortable. It is about reaching your highest potential and achieving your greatest success. Join me in my Play Big movement as I interview top experts in business, money, and entrepreneurship, all ready to serve you and to help you play big, be number one in your field, live your legacy, and create maximum impact. Everyone, welcome to this segment of the Play Big Movement podcast with Sharon Lechter. I'm excited to actually introduce you to someone that I've known for a couple of years. We've been on the same stage and just a genuine heart. I am so thrilled to know him. Brian Bogert, thank you so much for being with me today.
Sharon, it's a pleasure. I love spending time with you.
Well, I just got to know him by listening to him. So it's really amazing to hear his story. And I'm going to have him share it with you. But he is really, he goes to the inside. He works from the inside out with you. He's a human behavior and performance coach, business strategist, and all-around incredible young man. And I'm delighted to be able to highlight him today. So Brian, I could share your story of when you were 7, but I think it's really, I typically try and start each podcast with telling me a little bit about little Brian and how you.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of context on little Brian pre that, and I'll keep it tight. Little Brian always had a vigor for life, always had excitement, always was moving fast. I've been told that I was speaking full sentences at 18 months, and I told my dad at 2.5 to take my training wheels off my little 12-inch bike because I was going to ride, and I did. I always had this ability to do certain things, and I say that not in any way to impress, but to impress upon the point that I'm really grateful for all the things that followed later, because I really, in my early life, didn't face struggle. We moved around a lot. I was born in Arizona, moved to California for a little while. Then I lived in Australia and England all before the age of 6. And we moved back when I was 7 years old. We were living with my grandma for a while and rehabbing a home. And we went to Walmart at Tatum and Bell here, local in Phoenix, to get a 1-inch paintbrush. And we got through the checkout and I was excited to get home and put that paintbrush to use. So I was the first one to the car. My mom and my brother were 3 or 4 feet behind me. And this was back in the days before there was key fobs. So I had to wait for her to stick her hand in the purse, grab the key, stick it in the door, turn it so we go on our way. And I was waiting in that moment. The truck pulled up in front of the store. Driver and middle passenger got out. And the passenger all the way to the right felt the truck moving backwards. So he did what either one of us would do, Sharon. He scooted over to put his foot on the brake, but he hit the gas. Combination of shock and force threw him up on the steering wheel, up on the dashboard. And before you know it, he was catapulting 40 miles an hour across the parking lot right at us with no time to react. Ran over my stomach diagonally, tore my spleen, left a tire track scar on my stomach, and continued on to completely sever my left arm from my body. So this was August 10th, 1992, 115-degree day, 6:10 p.m. And the next thing my mom hears is my brother's voice saying, "Mom, Brian's arm is over there, 10 feet away." And in between where my arm and my body were was a string of muscle that was cooking like hamburger on the asphalt. Now, whenever I tell this story, I always have to pause and honor this next portion of the story and the woman that's in it, because I've said for years that I'm forever indebted to her. There was a nurse that walked out of the store right when this took place, and she saw the literal life and limb scenario in front of her. And I've said for years that I was forever indebted to her for her choice to go into action, but that story became even more powerful when I met her for the first time last year on the 30th anniversary of the accident. And I learned that she had a friend with her that day who was also a nurse, who also had all the training that she had, who did not choose to go into action that day. And I want to be really clear. I have no negative emotions, feelings towards that person. That was well within their right to turn and do what they needed to for themselves. So I want to be really clear when I say that it's not about her. What it's about is the power of an action in a moment and the ripple effect that can have for decades and in hundreds of thousands and millions of lives over a course of a variety of situations. She rushed right into action. She stopped the bleeding on the main wound, saved my life, and instructed some innocent bystanders to grab a cooler, fill it with ice, and get my detached limb on ice within minutes, which ultimately allowed me to successfully rehab my arm. And so The reality of it is I know I have an extremely unique story, Sharon, but what I've also learned is that every single one of you has a unique story. What's important is that you learn to be able to pause and extract the lessons you can from your stories and then become intentional with how do you apply them in your lives. And regardless of the extremities of your stories, they're worth it. And there's meaning in all of them. And we can tap into the collective wisdom of other people's stories to shorten our own curve to learning. And so I'll probably share a couple of lessons while we're here today, but that's what I believed was my transformational story for a lot of years.
That's
and it's
amazing.
One that certainly more people know than others. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brian, for sharing. I mean, you painted a visual picture that is going to be forever in my mind. My heart goes out to you as a little boy laying there, seeing what you saw. And thank God for that nurse who stepped in to take action. And how did you find her 30 years later? I mean, that's kind of an amazing story too.
Yeah. I've been looking for her for 10 years and we really struggled. My mom got a lucky string and she's known that I've been looking for her for a long time. So she literally about 5 days before the 30th anniversary, last August 10th, she got this string that led her down this path that led to this woman. And it was a surprise that she had for me that day. Yeah, it was a surprise she had for me that day because we literally met for the first time consciously, right, for me, within 2 hours of the accident, 30 years later. And we've now built a relationship. So yeah, that was a magical moment and a magical day. And again, I think the images that are burned into
as much for her as for you, I would imagine.
Hugely so. And we've stayed in touch and we communicate now. But it is interesting because it's, you say there are things that I saw and experienced that day. I have the pleasure of not remembering most of that day.
Yeah.
And so I often associate the fact that my mom and my brother are actually the ones that have images burned in their brain. I just have the stories to tell.
Yeah.
And, and so I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for them being there that day. And really for my family and my wife, who took me the second half of my life to repair a lot of the damage that this ultimately created. But yeah.
And so you started a journey. Obviously, I'm sure the healing process took a long time. Probably had multiple surgeries and all that good, things to repair that. But it puts you onto a pathway that now you truly help people see within themselves and those scars, scars of the soul, whatever that keep them from achieving success.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you find that pathway to support other people in the process?
It wasn't an easy one, and I'll try to expedite the most relevant points as quickly as possible because it was layers. It was layers. The first layer that was shed pretty significantly was the intellectual and mental narrative that I carried for a long time when I first came out of the hospital. Because I would tell people my story then, and immediately they'd turn to my parents for validation, which told me they didn't believe my story. And then they'd start limiting me through viewing me through their lens of what they'd be capable of in my situation and telling me what I was and wasn't going to be able to do in my life, which I was not willing to accept. But it created this mental narrative and it served me well for a while. And I believed that was what was going to get me everywhere. But it was Brian's good, Brian's strong, Brian's capable, Brian can do anything himself. What everyone else added, but wasn't really my narrative, was, oh, and he'll ask for help if he needs it. So 20, I'm snowboarding. I used to push the limits of life because I almost had to be on the edge of death to feel alive after experiencing what I did as a kid. And so I was snowboarding, was in a trick park, and I went down, re-broke my arm. Almost lost it again. Went 10 months with it hanging by my side, went through 7 surgeons who were afraid to touch me. And it was like probably one of the deepest, darkest, most depressed, disconnected, lonely periods of my life. I put on 40 pounds in 10 months. I lost so much sense of self. And I was surrounded at that time in my life by friends and family, like in abundance. And Sharon, nobody was there. And the interesting thing is, again, I want to be clear. I'm not even upset about that for any of them. Here was the truth. They bought into the power of my narrative. They believed Brian was good, Brian was strong, Brian was capable, Brian can do anything himself, and if he can't, he'll ask for help, right? But I didn't have the courage at that time in my life, in my most vulnerable period, one of them, to actually ask for help. So I went on this path of deciding that human connection was going to be important in my life, and I got really good at understanding the concepts of vulnerability and authenticity, to ask good questions and get other people to lower their armors down. But I still wasn't lowering my own. I just didn't know it still. right?
I'm going to interrupt you because I want to
Yeah.
highlight something that you just said because it really it connected with me. You have a narrative. I think I have the same issue. People think you're strong, you're bold, you're good. You help other people, so you don't need help. And
Hmm.
if you need it, you'll ask. I think that is such a amazing thing to talk about because I think I have that same issue. I think you live your life to be strong. You live your life. You want other people, and sometimes you just need to let it go and know that you do need help. And I does did that experience? I mean, you have an incredible talent. You have the ability to see within people and be able to help them find those things that they need to release and get over. Um, I just find that fascinating. Thank you for sharing that.
It's the truth. Thank you for calling attention to it. I mean, I think that exists for lots of reasons and not just because it's our belief. It's literally conditioned in the world, Sharon. I mean, the world tells us not to feel. They
Mhm.
tell us to show up with a smile on. They tell us that we can't bring emotions and the real elements of life into work because it'll impact performance, right? And then Sharon, just even in your case, like let's just call it what it is. You're an extremely strong, capable, intelligent, heartfelt woman who exists in many cases still in largely male dominated realms that create narratives and beliefs that require us to believe we need to protect ourselves,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as we build these mental and narratives, that's what they are. They're intellectual armor to protect what we're hiding or what we believe isn't going to be accepted on the other side of it.
Yeah. Well, when
And
I
and it
lo
takes a great deal of humility to start to stand in that truth too.
yeah. I mean, one of the things that has happened recently quite a few times, I'm like, "Why now?" When we lost our youngest son,
Hmm.
people even today will say, "You were so strong through all of it." And it's
Yeah.
like, uh,
You're like, I was a
no,
mess.
no, I wasn't.
You
Uh,
didn't? No? You
and
didn't
it
allow
was
yourself to go there?
well, I had a small group of friends who knew, what was happening to me internally and inside, but, for
Well, that's what
people
I was meaning. The truth is that you were a mess only in those safe spaces, and everywhere else you showed up and performed,
yeah.
right? And not performance like performance sake, like I'm putting on a performance, but right? So many of us learn to receive love, validation, and connection through performance, right?
Oh, I
Like
think
it's
that's
just,
very true. That's very true. Then and what happens is for many of us that are speakers and stuff, we get the adulation and the adoration and we're the fans, and then you come home and it's like, hey, so it
yeah,
is, yeah, you start defining yourself. I would say this all the time. You define yourself through the roles you play,
it's truth.
instead of inside who you are. Yeah.
And that's what was interesting is that's what happened after I was 20 is that I didn't have a healthy model for chasing who I was. I didn't have a healthy model for chasing human connection. What I had was the model of what the world told me, right?
Mhm.
Which is have the house, have the car, have the money, have the beautiful wife, have all the financial freedom, have a growing successful business. And so my model for chasing who really was chasing what? What house, what car, what amount of money, what amount
Mhm.
of success, what about a notoriety? And I did that very well. We built a risk management employee benefits consulting business to over 15 million in the last 10 years before I left. And the reality of it is it was at that time at 27, I woke up and we were eight to 10 million in there. I don't remember the exact numbers at this point. And I had more money than I ever thought I needed or wanted. I had the house, I had the car, I had the money, I had the notoriety, and we were doing a lot in the community at this time, still philanthropically, but my shame didn't allow me to ever accept that or tell anyone about it or be prideful about it because it felt like I needed to hide it because the bigger I lived, the more I felt I needed to apologize. And I realized at 27, and I woke up in my situation realizing that I got all the what's, but it cost me who I was. And that's when I started to actually repair. And that's when I hired my first coach. And so, very first comment, you might know Ben Newman. Ben Newman was my very first coach. I am still really grateful for the role that he played in my life and helping me see myself more clearly. But literally, in the first time we started working together, he said, Brian, you got to be doing this. I said, what are you talking about, Ben? Like, he goes, you've got an incredible story. You have an incredible, like, professional story. You help people all the time. You're always coaching. You're always speaking. You're always doing stuff in philanthropy. Why don't you get paid for it? I was like, yeah, whatever, dude. And, pardon my language, but I said, fuck off. Like, I'm paying you a lot of money not to tell me how great I am, but tell me figure out this other stuff. Now you're like trying to get me to do more in my life, right? That was my perception. I didn't see it as complimentary. I saw it as conflicting to the path that I believed I still needed to be on. But 9 months, he trickled it. And then the universe told me to jump in. So I started to unpack that. And I founded the company in 2015. And we were just really overwhelmed. And it was great. I ran them side by side for 5 years. And then my wife in 2019 ultimately said, hey, how would you feel if you didn't have to go to the office on Monday morning? I was flooded in fear. I was drowning in my doubt, swirling in my shame, and still not accepting my own truth at the time. And she went on to tell me that she believed that I'd allowed fear to enter into my world in a way I've never seen. She said, I believe that it's dictating your decisions now at this point. She said, I think you've convinced yourself we need the money, the status, the prestige. She said, I don't care if we live in a cardboard box on the corner. What we need is 100% of you, and we don't have it. She said, but I also know that you're dying a little bit every day you live in insurance. And every day you actually are helping people, you light up in a whole different way. And she said, I don't think you're even coming close to having the impact on the world that you want. And I know you're not even scratching the surface of your potential. So what if we took a risk and walked away from it all to go help the world? And so that's what we did 10 months later. And I had to really go deep in my own shame, the things that were keeping me stuck, my relationship with money that honestly, in the last couple of years, I learned even more because there was a lot that shifted from a world that I lived in before to where I am now. And I learned a lot of lessons in a whole new world that cost a lot of money. And it was still because of periods of time that I was still afraid to ask for help. But one of the most significant shifts in my ability to do what I do now came from when I was 32 and I was laying on the couch with my daughter. She puts her arm around my neck, kisses me on the cheek and says, I love you. And I just broke down in tears, Sharon. Now, I think men crying is a sign of strength. I envy men who can cry readily because I conditioned it out of me. When I shut off physical pain because it exceeded my ability to cope, I shut off emotional pain, mental pain, and spiritual pain for 20 to 25 years, and I didn't even know it. Now, all of a sudden, I'm crying on the couch with my daughter in this pure joy moment, and all it did was paint the picture of how pale all of my other emotions were in comparison. Because I wasn't feeling to the depth of what we're capable of. In fact, even in that moment, I wasn't, because I was still suppressing so actively that it wasn't even happening. And so what I realized is that human connection without emotion isn't really human connection. Fast forward just a little bit. We left in June of 2020, our other business. March of 2021, my wife and I would have told you we were in the best place in our marriage we've ever been. Because I left the world to go pour into helping people discover who they are and get back to the core of who they are and like live confidently and convicted in that place and have the permission to feel and say and act and do all the things in their lives that express their power and their potential. And then in April of 2021, a month later, we're sitting on our back patio and my wife goes on to tell me that things I'd done, ways that I'd showed up, ways that I was still showing up, were creating patterns in her life that had contributed to her losing who she was, which was a dagger to the heart. I'm pouring into the world, still saying that my wife and kids are my number one priority. And the three people that are closest to me, the only three people that I care about, are suffering because of me. The anger and how I was showing up without even realizing that I had anger. The damage that I was creating, the patterns that I was still passing down. And I would tell you that that was the most significant shift in my life because in April of 2021, I didn't know if I'd be married another month. And I made a promise to my wife that day. I handed her my phone and I said, I need you to clear the calendar. I'm going to take 10 days and I'm going to go inward and I'm going to figure this out. I can't promise you that it won't ever impact us again, but I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that the negative impacts of anger never affect our house as a result of me again. Proud to say in over 2 years, it's only happened 5 times. And here's the reality. We've changed generational patterns with our kids. My wife is now stepping into her power and potential because she feels emotionally safe with me for the first time in 17 years together.
Wow.
I provided physical safety, financial safety, leadership, inspiration, love, encouragement, but I didn't provide emotional safety for my family to lean into all of who they are and know that dad was going to be there always, consistently, with his heart. So I've spent the last 2 years trying to repair in my own house, and we're beyond repair. We're thriving now, and she's living and thriving in our business, standing by my side, and her name will be on the book when we release it.
Yay. That was still a conversation when we were together a couple of months ago. So I love it. Well, she was resistant to that. initially, I think, wasn't she?
I think she still is. But that's one of those things that even if she's resistant to it, I can influence the outcome and she'll get to ride the benefit of it, even if she doesn't see it yet.
Well, you can blame me. I think that's good. All right.
By the way, I will blame you and I'll blame the conversation. I'll be like, you realize, dear, like I could never be in Sharon's existence again if I saw my camera just faded out. I could never be in Sharon's existence again if your name wasn't on that title after that discussion. Like I'd just own it and be like, I have to, dear. But it's
just
the truth.
for the audience, we had dinner together a couple of months ago, and they were talking about the book, and he was saying she should be on there, and she was kind of resistant. And I said, if you participated, you should be on there. So good.
Yeah. Your influence, I think, will be good for her. So thank you.
I love that. So now, great segue. Tell us a little bit about the book.
So we're currently working on getting a proposal landed. The proposal's in the market. We've got 3 houses that are interested. So I can't guarantee anything other than I'm going to put all of myself and everything we can into this. The title of the book is going to be Take Out Your Trash. And it's going to be helping you understand the journey of identifying and removing the things that no longer serve you, that continue to show up as your fatal flaw. Yet you continue to ignore that they're there because the world's told you to push through and push it down. This is going to show how and why the trash from your past is the singular thing keeping you stuck. And we're going to give you the primary pillars to guide you through how to get through it and identify the treasure in it. Because all of the treasure is hidden in that trash pressure. And it's just a matter of exposing it and digging deep enough and long enough to get back to the core of who you are. So if you ever feel like garbage, if you ever receive something and someone's made you feel like garbage, you have trash from your past. And I promise you there's a way out. It's just that the world hasn't taught it yet. We're going to show you.
I love that, Brian. I've said before to groups, imagine a trash compactor. That's what we do. We just keep pushing it down. We just keep pushing it down and try to ignore it. And subconsciously, your subconscious does not ignore it. And it's always with you. And you have
and here's the thing, Sharon, like there's 3 things that our trash does that are really important. If you wouldn't mind, I'd love to expand on it. I don't know if we have time, but I'd love to, because I think it's really important for people to understand this. If you look at all of us in the unique human experience, I think we all seek and desire 4 things. We all seek and desire to feel safe. We all seek and desire to feel protected, and those are not the same thing. We all seek and desire to feel seen and understood, and we all seek and desire to feel connected. These last 2 don't happen unless the first 2 do. So what happens? We walk into a room and we don't feel safe. We don't feel seen. We don't feel connected. We protect ourselves. You know those 35-gallon outdoor black trash bags?
Yep.
I want you to imagine holding one in front of you completely open right now. And for the audience listening, do the same thing. Now I want to ask you a question. How can you expect that anyone in business, life, personal relationships can see who you are, what you want, your heart, your desire, your intents, your beliefs, your heart, your soul, all of the ways that you bring value into everything delivered through an invisible force field? And that's assuming they don't have one themselves that further distorts it. So people get really upset that they don't get seen and understood, but the reality of it is every time you protect yourself, you're further disconnecting yourself from the 2 things we want most, which is to be seen and understood and to be connected. So we teach this concept of protector and connector, which is you can walk into a room and even if you don't feel safe, convince yourself that you are. If you know who you are, you're confident in who you are, you've done the work, you know your boundaries exist, then you can have a strong spine and a soft front, which means that I can wrap a layer of protection around the environment that I'm in to ensure that everyone is safe, everyone is protected, everyone is seen and understood, and everyone is connected. So we have this ability, but it's about understanding what are we protecting in ourselves that creates the armor and the defense in the first place. So that's the first thing trash does. The other thing it does, now imagine holding 2 35-gallon trash bags full of debris in front of you. How long could you hold them there? A few minutes, maybe? And the longer you carry them, the more your muscles are going to burn, the heavier it's going to get. Oh, by the way, the trash from your past is the same. The more you push it down, the more you carry, the heavier it's going to get, the stinkier it's going to get, and the worse you're going to feel in every area of your life. Third thing it does, there's 2 types of trash cans, just like there's 2 types of people. Ones with lids and ones without. Ones with lids, they're those people that literally walk into every room, and it's not like you can feel their energy, like they just dump life on everybody. right? Like they drain the energy. They're just pouring all this. It's all there, right? And we know those people. Well, they're the ones without lids, right? Because once their can is full, there's only so much places for it to go, so it starts to overflow. And I love this analogy of our homes in COVID because it brings everything together. Everybody in their house has a trash can in their kitchen. Almost everybody I know takes out their trash every day or every other day at the minimum. Because if it doesn't, the kitchen stinks, the bag is full, and we need to move. But look at COVID. Everybody brought their businesses, their gyms, their extended family, their school, everything into their home. So now if they don't take their trash out every day, with more people in it, more people consuming, they're not doing it regularly and consistently, the trash is going to overflow. At some point, it's going to block our kitchen, our ability to eat healthy food, have communion and connection with our family. It starts trickling down into the hallways, the kids' bedrooms, the gym, the spot, it blocks everything. And so it's important for us to take it out. But then the other type is those with lids. I've got a seal on my lid and a key that locks it. Nobody knew how much I was suffering. That's almost worse though, because that trash, you start building a bomb because every time I push down, it builds more pressure. And at some point it releases trash shrapnel through my life, creating damage and guaranteeing I'm burying others in it. Here's the one thing I want everybody to hear, and I'll wrap this up. The trash from your past is not your fault. It just becomes your responsibility once you become aware of it, or you start burying others in yours.
Love that. I absolutely love that. So Brian, how can people find you?
BrianBogert.com on the website. If you're on social media, we're at Bogert Brian anywhere. And we have a whole variety of things because we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as we can. And what I realize is that also means we need things and solutions that are zero barrier or very low barrier of entry for people from a financial perspective to get the help they need. And so we have a whole variety of ways that we're helping people move, because I believe that move people move people. So if there's a way I can move you, just let me know.
I love that. Moved people move people. I'm going to write that down. I like that. What do you see for your future? What's your goal?
My goal is to continue to be more and more centered in the present in my life in every possible moment, because when I do that, everything grows and I have more joy, freedom, and fulfillment. And if I'm successful in my path of fulfilling the mission that we're on from a business and passion and purpose perspective, then my truth just continues to give others permission to live theirs, and more people get to experience the same kind of freedom in their life. But it's going to start here. It has to.
I love that. I love that. So for those of you watching and listening, Brian's going to hang out and do another recording for the private Facebook group, the Play Big Movement. So if you're not a member, please go ahead and join. But I'd say rewind and listen to this again, because there's a ton of good golden nuggets, mic drop moments in this interview. And I couldn't end it. It's longer than normal because it was important for him to be able to share his information. So I appreciate you guys being here, watching and listening to this segment of the Play Big Movement podcast. Brian, thank you so much for your time and your energy and your wisdom. And thank you for agreeing to hang in for a few more minutes. And for the rest of you, you are fabulous. So thank you. Have a great day. And thank you for listening to this segment of the Play Big Movement podcast with Sharon Lechter. Love you all. Thank you for listening to this segment of the Play Big Movement podcast. Please subscribe to iTunes and leave us a review, as well as join us in other areas of social media, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Sharon Lechter, and for Facebook, author Sharon Lechter. Thank you so much and have a fabulous day.